here today to talk about using Cloverleaf to spark meaningful conversations. And so I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. Again, if you're just joining us, we have a resource that we are using today, and it is in the chat. If you can't see it, we will pop it in again in just a moment. If you're just joining us, you can get that resource. All righty. So I'm going to share my screen. And we are going to get started. So this webinar was basically, we take all the feedback that we get from you and we ask you, like, what do you want to hear about? There was a lot of feedback from our recent webinars about collaboration, conversation, communication. And luckily that coincided with some timely information from Gallup that came out around meaningful conversations and some helpful data for not just leaders, but anyone. Like when I say the word leader in my field, this does not mean just a person that has direct reports. Any single human being can have leadership strengths, leadership qualities without a certain title, without a role. So everybody has leadership ability and leadership strengths that they use, whether they're an individual contributor, a leader with direct reports, a senior leader with many direct reports that are managers, or again, other senior leaders, senior directors. This really today is about how do we use Cloverleaf to spark these meaningful conversations. And we are going to share with you a brand new feature that just launched. You may have gotten an email about it, but it is a wonderful way to customize the coaching tips that you get. So we will share that as well. So our agenda for today, we are going to just do a quick poll in a minute after we go through the agenda, and we'll just find out a little bit more about you. We're going to share some Gallup research around the characteristics of meaningful conversations, and we are going to add a Cloverleaf twist. So we've basically gone through some of the Gallup data and then inserted where you could use Cloverleaf to enhance what some of that data refers to. So we're going to talk about a couple of areas: recognition or appreciation for recent work, collaboration and relationships, discussing current goals and priorities at work. We're going to talk about the length of meaningful conversations. And we'll also talk about employee strengths or things they do well. So these are the characteristics, the things that make conversations meaningful according to Gallup. Then I'm going to ask you for some of your best practices with your meaningful conversations. And I'll invite people to raise their hand and speak as well if you'd like to speak. I'd be happy to get some of your best practices. We're also going to share some additional search prompts for insight search. We are working on developing a longer resource for you around all the different things you can use in the insight search, which I will demonstrate in this webinar. And then we will share the data the next webinar. We'll ask for your questions and then your feedback. Remember, your feedback actually guides how we develop the webinar. So you'll have the opportunity to actually suggest topics for the next webinar, and then we'll go through that feedback and design that feedback based upon your feedback. Okay, so let's just start with polls. So if we're going to just find out a little bit more about you so we know who is here. So if Jason, if you would launch the poll, just let us know what best describes your role. Are you a senior or C-suite talent or learning leader? Are you director or manager level talent learning leader? Are you manager of a team? Are you an individual contributor, or are you a coach or consultant? So just take a minute and let us know a little bit about yourself. What best describes your role?
Always love how engaged our audience is. We are already at 81 people out of 97.
You're the best. We're almost there. Can we get to 90%? Just a few more people. I mean, a 90% poll is like crazy.
If you can't see the poll, it should have popped up. If you minimize the video window, do you see it maybe hiding behind?
Right. Well, I think we're in a good spot. We're at 80, 89, 90%. We're at 90%.
Yeah.
All right. So if you could just end that for us, and we'll see share the results there. So we have 42% of you are managers of a team. The next group is 30% individual contributors. And then we have directors and manager level talent learning leaders and coach, kind of similar. And then our senior. Good. So we have a good mix of people here. Awesome. If you're just joining us, Jason, if you would just share that resource in the chat, that would be great. If you're just joining us and you need to grab that resource, you can do that. So we're going to talk about characteristics of meaningful conversations. And again, this is directly related to recent information and research that came out from Gallup. And they really identified all of the different characteristics of meaningful conversations and gave some specific guidance around that. So this is also, we're always following trends in our field. And so we come and we want to share that with you. So number one was recognition or appreciation for recent work. So Gallup and WorkHuman together, they found that only 10% of employees are asked how they like to be recognized and appreciated. There are some people that really don't like being appreciated in public. They don't like being appreciated in a group. And only 23% of employees strongly agree that they get the right amount of recognition for the work they do. The people who actually do get the right amount of recognition for the work they do, they are 4 times more likely to be engaged. So now some of us grew up in a generation where that wasn't part of how we grew up. Recognition, awards, or whatever it is, sometimes we just grew up in a different atmosphere where that wasn't what we used as motivation. However, it doesn't mean that what motivates us motivates someone else. So just because you might not be motivated or need certain recognition does not mean someone else might not need it. Now, to some extent, we all need it, right? And it's important to understand how do the people that you work with need it and what's the mode or method that they like it delivered. So that's the first thing. We're going to break all these down into Cloverleaf, different Cloverleaf uses, but we're just doing super high level. In terms of collaboration and relationships, Gallup found a connection between coworker relationships and an intention to stay at an organization. And that managers really play a key role in connecting the right people to support each other. So if you're a leader, right, and you can see, hey, there's people on my team who might be actually good pairs for each other. Today, I'm going to show you how to use Cloverleaf to figure that out. Now, if you're an individual contributor and you see that there might be someone who might be able to support you with a complementary skill set, you want to also advocate for yourself as well, right? Too often we put everything on the leader, right? And yes, the leader has a responsibility to guiding the team, but individual contributors also have to advocate for themselves and ask for what they need as well. In terms of current goals and priorities at work, clarity at work in the workplace is more essential than ever, especially for people that are just entering the workforce. Because we've seen the increase in remote teams or dispersed teams, this means you need more frequent touch points and meaningful connections to actually navigate changing business and customer needs. Like if there's a change, if there's something that needs to be discussed. So current goals and priorities have to be sort of front and center, and they have to be delivered on a certain cadence. And that comes out also down to the length of a meaningful conversation. It's, according to Gallup, a 15 or 30-minute conversation is actually okay to qualify as a meaningful conversation if it's frequent. So like if it's a weekly touch point. The shorter conversations have a greater impact sometimes than a longer conversation, but only, again, if there's a consistent cadence. But if managers don't give employees this time or they aren't interacting weekly in some sort of one-on-one, they're going to need a longer time to catch up. So I know the feeling of when your calendar's all choppy and you don't want, all those little 15-minute meetings somewhere, but maybe you just, make sure that you have a regular standing or whatever it is to be able to have more frequent, shorter touch points rather than longer ones. Now, employee strengths or things they do well, managers can have a lot more meaningful interactions about how each person gets their work done if those conversations are based in their strengths. Now, Cloverleaf and its functionality is a goldmine for this. So we're going to be going through how you can leverage Cloverleaf to increase the meaningful meter of your conversations based upon leveraging some of the strengths information that's on Cloverleaf. You can either, this can be just doing your daily coaching reflections, saving and sharing tips, or even just comparing yourself to another person. Now, when it comes down to that first piece around recognition and appreciation, that was that sort of number one piece. This is also a little nerve-wracking, right? 60% of managers, according to Gallup, feel that they are doing a good job recognizing their team's hard work and contributions. But only 35% of ICs share that same sentiment, right? So there's a disconnect. And it's not, look, it's not intentional. It's not that like, oh, I'm purposely, inflating my understanding of recognition. It just may be an invitation to look for leaders to look at, okay, I might think I'm doing great and I need to check in with my people. Now, those of you that are individual contributors, again, you need to solicit and advocate for yourself, ask for that feedback, solicit that feedback as well to create those conversations. So if we're going to talk about recognition and appreciation, let's now get into it in terms of Cloverleaf. So the first thing is, if you have to find out how people on your team like to be recognized, you have a tool at your fingertips, and we've created some prompts in your resource. So if you go to your resource right here, where I am right here, you have some prompts here that I've given you. For example, how should I recognize Joe Smith? What are steps for maintaining inspiration with Joe Smith, right? So if I go on to my dashboard, I can go and ask that right now, right? So how can I, maintain inspiration with Jason? Jason's right here, so I'll put him on the spot. It's thinking. Okay. So Jason enjoys, this is very true. Jason enjoys offering ideas to help problem solve, and is even energized and affirmed by it. If up against a challenge, consult Jason for some creative and spontaneous suggestions. Great. So this is actually telling me if I really want to sustain recognition, motivation, I can also leverage Jason in those times when maybe I need another creative eye, right? So you can learn and use this specific functionality on Cloverleaf to be able to increase recognition and to also be able to increase touch points to actually utilize people's strengths in some of their work and some of the projects that they're doing, right? So those prompts are also, again, in your resource. How can I give feedback to Joe? We also have some prompts all the way at the bottom as well. We have some additional prompts here. We're going to be building a larger resource of prompts. But if you want to know exactly how you can recognize each individual person on your team, you want to customize it, right? How should I recognize that person? Find out what that is. Use this specific tool to make your interaction more meaningful. The other thing you can do is you can just visit a person's profile and explore their insights to trigger recent contributions. So one of the biggest complaints about traditional performance reviews or performance evaluations is the the trend of recency. So what that means is we usually only think of the most recent performance of folks in the past 30 or 60 days, and we're not evaluating the entire, period, because we're human and we can't possibly remember every single thing that happened. So here's what I like to do. I like to actually go to someone's profile, right? If I'm trying to trigger recognition and appreciation, I might go and look at someone's leadership strengths, right? Or leadership insights, right? And I might look at this and see if it triggers for me where Jason may be stepping up and providing some of this leadership on my team. This can then help me, right, to interrupt my recency. Actually, yes, Jason's strength of enthusiasm did actually make a big difference when we brought in our new hire, right? And maybe that reminds me, just reading this reminds me to make that acknowledgement of Jason's efforts. You cannot possibly remember every single thing that happens, every single strength, every single thing about every person on your team. You can't. Cloverleaf will help trigger those positive memories to influence that recognition and that appreciation so you can go and have that meaningful conversation, or even just use it as a starter. Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much. You bring so much positivity to our team, and bringing on our new team member, you were awesome at just helping show her the ropes. I really want to just thank you and acknowledge you for your dedication, right? Super simple, right? Remember, thank you and good job are not recognition, right? It's not that thank you isn't important, but sharing the impact and sharing the exact connection between that strength and the result is what meaningful recognition is, right? So we have to go beyond thanks. We have to go beyond great job. We have to go beyond thumbs up emoji. We have to go and have those meaningful conversations, and Cloverleaf can give you those triggers and reminders. We can also start a share and recognize practice, right? So what do I mean by this? So, and then this is also outlined in your resource. So you can invite people to share a tip about another person that relates to a difference that person made and share the specific feedback. So for example, you might use this as a verbal meeting opener, right? And say, hey, we're going to start our team meeting next week with everyone sharing a tip about somebody else and recognizing the person for how they maybe have used that strength or skill, right? And so you can prepare people, you can let people know, and you just do sort of a little bit of a round robin. So this is outlined in your resource. You can also use Cloverleaf Hot Seat as a team recognition opener or closer. So we've demonstrated Cloverleaf Hot Seat many times on these webinars. There is a link to the guide of Cloverleaf Hot Seat in your resource. It's basically an informal recognition exercise where you use someone's profile. So now I'd like to hear from a few of you in the chat. Share what's your sort of best practice for recognizing and appreciating others. Now, remember, you don't have to be a leader to recognize and appreciate others. I mean, being a leader with direct reports. Anybody can practice appreciation and recognition. So what do you do? Share your best practices. What do you do that really helps to remind you to recognize and appreciate people? So pop it in the chat. Also, Jason shared our Cloverleaf Hot Seat article. If you do want to use that exercise, you can use that exercise. Remember, it's not just about the leader delivering one-on-one recognition. For example, doing Cloverleaf Hot Seat is the leader facilitating recognition and appreciation within their team. So what do you do? Maybe you can even share how you use Cloverleaf for recognition and appreciation. What do you do? What are your best practices for let's see. Now you can chat with everybody, so you should be good. Great. Lee shared our team does Thankful Fridays, where we shout out folks on our team and how they helped us throughout the past week in our department group chat. I love that. Thankful Fridays. Jessica said we have postcards that we use to write a little personal individual note to colleagues. I love that. Mike shared, write it down every time you see something, at least every day, and ask for self-assessments. That's so great. So see something great, say something. Jason shared, my team has a 15-minute weekly huddle with a focus on recognition and appreciation in which any team member can recognize any other team member. This is awesome. Again, these are all best practices. Feel free to borrow from each other. These are great things to do. Sometimes we need a structure for it. It's not just always going to happen. We can't say, oh, just do more recognition. When we have a structure for it or a cadence for it, it really helps. Deborah shared on team group chat, we do a shout out for an individual recognition. Excellent. Some teams have shout out channels, like specifically for that. Our organization here at Cloverleaf, we use Bonusly, and Bonusly is like a platform where you can recognize people and they can get little points, and those points can be redeemed. And we love that. We love to shout out each other and give people our Bonusly points. Timely, yes, it's got to be timely. Public, when those people are okay with that. So some people, again, there's like a small percentage of people who hate that. So you just have to know who your audience is there. Yes, awesome. Really, really great suggestions. Okay. So we're going to move to collaboration and relationships. And again, we're going to share a little bit about how you can use Cloverleaf for some of this. So I'm going to go on to the team dashboard in a minute, but you want to consider who might make a great complementary pair for peer collaboration using DISC. And this is where you really are leveraging the team dashboard. So I'm going on to DISC right now, so you could see where everybody lays out. Now, remember, the closer you are to the edge of the circle, the higher your score is in that quadrant. The closer you are to the neighboring quadrant, the higher your score is in the neighboring quadrant, right? So it might look like all of these people are high C's. They are, but they also are high S's because they're closer to this corner. So what do I mean by this? And this is all in your resource, so it's all laid out there. So for example, I's and C's can balance each other out in the following ways. So stands for influence, C stands for conscientiousness, right? And they can balance each other out. How does that happen, right? This balances the energy of an the I who's an enthusiastic go, 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 with the precision of a C, right? The I is kind of sometimes moving too fast, right? And the C has a certain precision that creates balance. The I also has a lot of creativity and ideas, and the C brings that logic in and says what's feasible, right? What's realistic, what can work. We can also combine the flair for communication of an I with the documentation and process outlining of a C. Sometimes an I is so into the idea, into the conversation, but nothing's being written down, right? So you can think to yourself, if you're an individual contributor and you're an I, you can think to yourself, hey, how can I use a C as a sounding board? But if you're a leader and you're trying to facilitate these meaningful collaboration experiences and relationships, you can kind of pair people up, say, hey, I think you'd be great at working on this project with this person because you both have these complementary skill sets. You can do the same with D's and S's. So D's and S's can balance each other out in the following ways. Again, you're looking across the disc circle, right? So the assertiveness of a D, right, will always sort of shine and stand out. And the supportiveness of the S, who's thinking of the team, right? Hey, how does this impact the team? It can help sort of bring this well-rounded approach. You can also combine the drive of a D with the patience of the S so that everything gets done, right? The D is also often moving fast, but it's about goal accomplishment, right? And so the S can kind of say, okay, let's ensure that this actually gets done. This actually gets executed on, because the S has a lot more patience than the high D. You can balance the goal orientation of the D and the team stability that the S usually creates. So often the D will have a lot of big goals and things they want to accomplish. And the S is listening for what's the capacity of the team? What can they handle? What's their realistic application of some of these goals? So it can be a really great complementary pair. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, right? There might be some difference of approach, but if those people are kind of brought together by the leader, or if you are an individual contributor and you want to be able to leverage the skills or talents of another person, I think it's a great way to sort of create this more meaningful collaboration and relationship factor of interactions. I didn't put it in the resource, but I've shared it on a lot of different webinars. Is in 16 types is the cognitive function pair. So if you are trying to have meaningful conversations with people, it's really good to open up, and this is kind of hidden when you're looking at your team dashboard. If you click on it, it pops up this additional information. And the middle two letters of your 16 types represent how you mentally consume and make decisions on information. This also will tell you how you can open up a conversation with someone, right? Because it's how they consume information. So for example, if you want to have a meaningful conversation with an ST, they are focusing on acquiring information and logic, right? They want to know details up front. So you might want to say in that conversation, here's exactly what I want to talk about. But if maybe you're talking to an NF, they're more based on human connection, people-oriented, idea focus. Maybe you're creating some connection and rapport before you launch into that meaningful conversation. So this can also be a great tool on the team dashboard to spark customizing conversations so they become more meaningful to that person. Remember, we don't get to say what's a meaningful conversation if we're on one side of it, right? If the conversation's being had with us, it becomes meaningful based upon how I receive it, how customized it is to me. So the meaningful factor is evaluated by the other person, right? And it works both ways as well. So it's really important, and we can see that disconnect from that Gallup data. So it's really important to look at the personalization in those conversations to make them more meaningful. You can also leverage the thinking styles comparison. If you're trying to create more collaboration and more relationships to spark more meaningful interactions, if you're on your team dashboard and you go to your thinking styles comparison, which is right here, you can change the assessment and you can understand a little bit more about how two people might think differently, might work differently, might interact differently. So if I'm a leader and I'm trying to create more collaboration and relationships on my team, I might say, how can I leverage the strengths of these two people or even their differences for good or for meaningful connection or for, collaboration on a specific project or initiative. And you as an individual contributor, absolutely anybody can go look for themselves and say, hey, what would it look like if I paired up with Jean and we work together, right? So how do we differ in how we see things? And if I want to create more collaboration and more meaningful relationships and interactions on my team, I can spark that myself by also comparing myself and someone else. So as we look to collaboration and relationships here, we can really look at the whole intention of Cloverleaf, right? That every team's a thriving team, that people are unleashed to do their best work. And we can use so much of the tools that are on Cloverleaf to create those pairs of people that can support each other. So I want to hear from a few of you. How do you create more meaningful collaboration and relationships in your work environment? How do you do that? Like, what best practices do you have that help you collaborate and build relationship better, that creates meaningful recognition? Maybe if you're a leader, you do certain things to create opportunities to collaborate. Maybe if you're an individual contributor, you do certain things to solicit opportunities to collaborate and have better relationships. But what do you do to enhance the quality of collaboration and relationships in your work environment? Mentorship helps, absolutely. Donnie shared in the chat, mentorship is huge, right? When we have someone who we're able to lean into, right, for ideas, strategies. Mike shared spring for pizza. Everyone is happy and wants to work together when there's pizza involved. Now, Mike, pizza happens to be my favorite food, so I will wholeheartedly agree with this. I know there are some folks that can't have pizza, but basically free anything. Coffee, pizza, whatever it is, usually makes people happy. So if we want people to come together, remember, don't underestimate the power of team building. I know there are some people that are like, I don't have time to team build. I don't want a team building offsite. I don't really want that. There is so much research to share that when you do have those opportunities for teams to actually connect as human beings, it impacts when they come back to the workforce. It creates more relatedness. Oh, we might have the same background or we have similar work experiences, but we don't have the space or the structure or the container to have those non-work experiences unless you give it to me, right? So even just investing in some of those team building experiences can go a long way. Someone shared in the chat, when there is a concern, targeting the leader to get them on your side by understanding their perspective, and share yours as well so that you can get everyone on board, right? So, you definitely want to make sure everybody has all the information to resolve absolutely, anything in the best way possible. Janet shared, sometimes people don't like to be tough, but if they see that you do and how you do it, they follow these ideas. So lead by example, right? So yeah, you want to make sure that you're modeling a certain level of leadership that people can follow and step, right? You want to create those moments, for people to be able to also define their own style as well. All right, so we're going to share about how we focus on current goals and priorities to make more meaningful recognition and how we use Cloverleaf for that. So you can help streamline development. If you want people to be able to focus on certain professional development goals, we have a new feature on Cloverleaf called Coaching Focus. And this is about streamlining development to customize the development you receive through Cloverleaf on your individual dashboard. So I'm going to go to my dashboard. If you haven't seen this yet, I'm going to encourage you to use this and you to encourage your team to use this. So if you see this little square up here, it says set a coaching focus. When you click on set a coaching focus, now it is basing this on my role. So my role in Cloverleaf is coach or consultant. So I'm going to go back for a moment just so you, in case you need to update your role, I want you to go back over here. You can do this now if you want, if you're logged in. If you click the little pencil over here, your role right here, right, you can select, right? So my role right now says coach or consultant. If you would like to change your role, maybe your role isn't correct, maybe you got promoted, you can change your role to team manager. The coaching focus topics will shift based upon the role you select. So for example, I'm right now coach or consultant. I'm going to switch my role to team lead for just a minute. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to my dashboard and I am going to click on setting a coaching focus, right? So you'll notice the coaching focuses are different than when my role was coach or consultant. So I can choose, let's say I want to maybe increase managing my emotions and understand others to build better relationships. I want my coaching focus to be emotional intelligence. Now, when I save this, what happens? It means that some of my tips that I receive in my emails will be related to this topic that I want to develop myself in. And it'll always be labeled, right? It'll always say, hey, related to your coaching focus. So when you get your coaching email, if the tip is connected to your coaching focus, you'll see some text there that says, because you selected your coaching focus, we're giving you this tip. Now, let's say for a month, you feel like, hey, you know what? I want to shift my coaching focus. You can go back and change it. You know what? I've got some great tips on emotional intelligence. What's really that I think I really need now is building team trust. We have a huge initiative right now. I've got to get everybody on board, and I have to have everyone feeling safe and open to communicate and ask questions. So I'm going to change my focus to building team trust. So you can change your focus as often as you want. You can play around with it. I'm going to go switch my role back to coach or consultant right here, and that's going to shift my coaching focus. Now, when you switch your role, I believe you might have to clear your coaching focus again, right? So my coaching focus might be managing change, and I'm going to save that, right? And so again, this is a way, right? If we want to help people focus on current goals, right? And we want to listen to what they're looking to achieve, we want to basically suggest to our team and to people that come to us with certain goals to pick a coaching focus, to leverage Cloverleaf more specifically and more individually towards their needs and towards their development needs. Now, if we also are trying to help work with someone around priorities and planning, and we might want to better understand someone's work style, right? We can use Insight Search for this, right? If we're trying to prioritize with someone, we first have to understand, how should I prioritize planning tasks with Joe? So for example, in your resource, we've given you some prompts for this as well. So in current goals and priorities, I've given you some prompts. How should I prioritize planning tasks with Joe? If I'm trying to work with someone to have a meaningful interaction around prioritizing, I want to be able to go and say, how should I prioritize planning tasks with, let's say, Peggy. How should I prioritize planning tasks with Peggy, right? And so it's important for me to understand, right? Hey, when assigning a new task to Peggy, it may be helpful to share tried and true steps that have led to successful completion of this task in the past. This will give Peggy a solid foundation for which to begin. This means if I go say to Peggy, hey, just do this, or hey, can you do this? And I don't share any context or any best practices, it might be a little bit more challenging for her. So if I want to help Peggy prioritize and execute, this is how I might want to communicate with Peggy, right? And so if we want people, and again, this doesn't have to be a leader with direct reports. Maybe you're collaborating with someone on a project and you're waiting on some of their deliverables for you to do your part, right? And maybe you're leading the conversation, right? Maybe you're just leading the project. Maybe you're not necessarily their leader, but you're leading the project. And maybe it's cross-functional, right? Now I can understand, how can I get better results from the people that I'm working with so that they're focusing on current goals and priorities. So there are some work style prompts in the resource as well that you can use for help. The other thing, if you've been on these webinars before, you know I'm slightly obsessed with Cloverleaf reflection. So if you are trying to help people meet professional development goals, right? When we're talking about Insight Search and work styles, we're talking about how to understand how people think and work. But if we're talking about how can we make sure people have positive goals to work towards and are receiving development on a regular basis, I will always advocate to challenge people on your team for regular use of Cloverleaf Reflections. And so Cloverleaf Reflections is the micro-learning experience that when repeated, right, makes a difference, right? The same thing, if you have one 15 to 30-minute meaningful conversation with someone and you don't talk to them for 2 months, it's not going to make a difference. It's the same thing with reflections. If we want to help people develop themselves professionally, we can send them to a 3-day course that's going to take them out of their work environment and they're going to come back stressed. We can, yes, make sure they get, make sure they get access to learning and resources that we have inside of our own LMS or that we have available through learning and development. We can do all that. And this is a smaller, more digestible, more easily to integrate into the workday practice. Hey, you know what? Let's just try doing reflections 3 times a week for the next month, right? We have a webinar where we went over how to set up this challenge and how to do this. And it's in our webinar section, in our help section, and how to set up a team challenge. But as much as you can, if you want to help people develop themselves, these micro moments, it takes 1.5 minutes a day to fill this out, right? These micro moments of development add up over time and will help people accomplish some of their development goals that they might have articulated. This is, again, using these features to spark these meaningful conversations, to spark this meaningful development. So share in the chat, what do you do to help your team stay, and yourself or your team? What do you do to help yourself, if you're an individual contributor, or your team, if you're a leader, to stay focused on current goals and priorities? What do you do? What do you do to help them stay focused on professional development goals? How do you help people prioritize? What are your best practices? Oh, and also Jason put in the chat a help document that goes over how coaching focus works. So all those things I just clicked on, we have a product guide that you can share if you're asking people to select a coaching focus. You can share and put that in there and share with people if you want them to do a coaching focus. Remember, it's always a great idea to get a team on board with something, right? Instead of just saying, hey, try this, try that. Hey, why don't we all try this? See what the outcome is. So if you want to share in the chat, how do you motivate your team in staying connected to current goals and priorities? Maybe there's a best practice you have to stay on task with priorities. Maybe there's also something that you do to help people focus on goals. Mike shared periodic check-ins to ensure we're still on track, clarifying expectations and updating status. Yes, absolutely. And this is a lot of what was in that Gallup research, right? We've got to clarify those expectations, right? We have to make sure that we're doing status updates. And it's so, like, when we set a big goal or we start a big initiative, things change, right? Now we get into action and we have to kind of adjust things. Is this still the right way to go? Is this still the effective direction? Do we have to shift anything, right? So Deborah said, I take a pulse monthly on how I'm tracking on achieving my goals or if I need to adjust the goal. Excellent. So important, Deborah. People make a big deal around setting goals, but it's tracking the goals and adjusting them along the way. That's the challenge. And so if we do set big goals for ourselves, remember, we want to make sure to also set smaller ones to help us feel those little wins along the way. That's that number one reason why New Year's resolutions don't work, because people set these giant big goals, and if they don't achieve some aspect of them in 2 or 3 weeks, they're done, right? Set those smaller goals to get to that end goal. And I like the pulse check-in also, Deborah. Donnie shared, write them down and track with accountability. 100%. It's got to be documented, right? What gets measured gets done, right? So they've got to be documented. They have to be visible, and we have to see them more than once. It's kind of like if you forgot you bought certain things at the grocery store, and then you go to the grocery store 3 weeks later and you buy the same thing, realizing, oh, now I have 3 things of ketchup because I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't seeing it, right? So you have to make sure it's in front of you, right? You have to make sure something's in front of you that you see it. Christopher shared, I use reminders to check in and get status updates with team members. Awesome. I use my calendar for all of this. I'll use iCal, and I'll create iCloud calendars that don't block my calendar from like my Outlook or G Suite, and I'll create those reminders so that it's in my face. My calendar is just how I coordinate everything. How I lit everything from meeting appointments to do laundry. It's in my calendar, right? And so those reminders can also be super helpful. It's got to be in our face. Awesome suggestions. Great. Okay. So the length of the conversation. Now, this isn't so much related to Cloverleaf, but I'll just share with you here. So you want to explore your current cadence. Are you doing 15 to 30 minutes weekly with people? If you're an individual contributor and you need more touch points with your leader, you also have to ask for it, right? If you're a leader, you want to initiate that as well. If you're going bi-weekly, you may have to do longer. You may have to do 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, here's my big announcement. Email, Slack, and Teams does not count as meaningful conversations. Those are not conversations. Those are interactions. Those are electronic interactions. Email, Slack, and Teams are for notification, not communication. Commune means to come together. An electronic Slack message. Now, don't get me wrong. You can use Slack for shout outs. You can use Slack for recognition. It's all of that. But a conversation, right, is when you actually speak to somebody. Many of you have been on an email chain for weeks that could have been resolved in a 5-minute conversation. You've been on a ridiculous, insane email chain and you've all had that experience at least once, right? And so conversations mean conversations, live, virtual, phone, Zoom, MS Teams, conversations, right? So important to know that, right? You want to consider, I will share a little Cloverleaf piece in here, consider increasing the meaningful meter by bringing saved tips about that person to spark discussion. So if you're on your dashboard, right, and you get a tip about someone, let's go on to my daily coaching. Actually, no, I don't have to go to the daily coaching. I can even just go at Insight Search. If I want to remember this about Peggy, I can actually save it. Right now, when I save it and I go to my saved tips, right, I'm like, oh, I want to share this with Peggy, right? I can now share it, right? So I can copy this and I can share it, right? So in terms of the sort of creating those meaningful conversations, even if they're short, consider increasing that meaningful factor. Bring that saved tip about the person to spark discussion. Hey, I read this about you on Cloverleaf. I've noticed that, you're great at XYZ. Where do you want to do more of that, right? And so again, you're just increasing that meaningful meter. Instead of talking about the weather, you're talking about something that does mean something to somebody else. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the employee strength emphasis. Now, this is where Cloverleaf really is a gold mine. So the first thing you can do in terms of this, right, if we're talking about, considering leveraging strengths, right? Here at Cloverleaf, we love to unleash people to do their best work. When people are doing the work that they enjoy, right, they're engaged, right, they have better outputs. Now, granted, there's always a percentage of your job that you're not going to like, and that's fine. There's always 20 to 30% of stuff you wish you didn't have to do. But as long as you're in that 60 or that 70 or 80%, like, I really like what I'm doing, right, you're engaged, you're there. So you can consider leveraging via strengths, strength scope, and Clifton strengths to observe critical strengths, and you can energize team members with some of those strengths, and if they're high on their list. So what do I mean by this? I'm going to go to the team dashboard again. So if you notice, we have all the strengths assessments right down the middle. So if you are working with an individual, right, now, and I want you to, and for those of you that might not know how to interpret all this, right? So when you see an 11 next to the strength, that means 11 people have that strength as one of their top 5. So it's this, what happens is if you see it like a 9 people have leadership as one of their top 5, right? And so you can go to someone's individual, if I go to Nick's individual profile, I can then see from that assessment, I can see his top 5 strengths. So I may be having a conversation with Nick and I may be saying, Nick, creativity is one of your top strengths. It's number 2 on the list. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being I'm using this a lot, 1 being I'm not at all, where do you think you are with using creativity right now in your current role? Do you see how you can create a coaching question right there, right, for somebody, right? You're not telling them this is what you should be doing to be more creative. You're asking them, hey, where do you feel you are in your creativity meter? What else would you like to do that sparks this strength? Right? And you want to get that person talking, right? Get that. Now you can get to know, well, I really enjoy being creative here and here, right? Even if you think you know someone, even if you think you've worked with them for 3 years, I already know this about them. Spark the conversation, right? Dig something up that creates that strengths-based experience, right? So you can use these assessments, right? And you don't need to be a via strengths certified anything. You can just bring this up and spark a conversation, right? For how they might be using some of these strengths. Now, Nick happens to be hysterical, so it's not a surprise that He's #1 with humor. But, and he always brings the lightness and humor, right, to conversations, meetings, right? It's great, right? So I appreciate that about Nick. But if I want to understand how Nick is being fulfilled in his role, again, I might ask him and sort of latch on to that strength. So you can go to the dashboard. It's very similar with Clifton strengths as well. So if you look at the team strengths, it's the same thing. If you see a 9, we've got 9 people with positivity as one of their top 5 strengths in Clifton strengths. Now, when you're up here with strength scope, it's a little bit different. There's some clear strengths, right? So I might want to ask someone, hey, relationship building is one of your clear strengths, right? How are you leveraging that right now? Or we also have potential energy drainers, things that could sort of drain someone. Hey, are you having to do a lot of strategic mindedness where it's draining you and that's sort of taking away from your energy, right? So again, you can use this dashboard to fuel those conversations, to just check in with people. Is the role and the work that they're doing, is it a match for what they're really great at, what they thrive at? And where can additional work, stretch assignments, or opportunities be offered to people to give them more of that strengths-based work? You can also identify team members to identify leadership strengths from their profile if you are setting leadership goals with people. So if you're on your individual profile, I'm going to go back to my dashboard. You've got your strengths that are all in these little topics, and you can go in here and have people identify maybe some leadership strengths that they would like to be using more, right? Again, this can spark conversation. You can go through some of these. Now you can go to the next level with this. I just did this a few weeks ago. You can lead a team strengths development session. I did this a few weeks ago. The outline is in your resource. It's super simple. It was one of the most meaningful conversations that I've had as a coach and a trainer and a learning consultant in many, many years. And we got feedback from the leader who was on that, who was like, wow, like everyone was so vulnerable. Is that what always happens? Well, here's all I did. Okay. I was working with a group of 10 people. And again, you can do this as a leader. You can suggest this as an individual contributor. Here's all I did. I asked everybody to bring up their Cloverleaf profile. And I asked them to focus on a couple of different topics. And again, this is all in your resource, the outline for this. I did it in 60 minutes. I could have used more time, so you might want to do it in 90 minutes. It depends on how many people on your team. So you invite each person to bring up their Cloverleaf profile. So they're on their own screen, right? And you're asking them to look at the tips under the categories of leadership, communication, motivation, and work style. So I kind of wanted to narrow it down. And I gave them some time to look through it. You can also give this as pre-work, by the way. I did it in the moment. And here's what I asked them to do. I asked each person to select one tip that represents a strength that's currently activated and to share an example of that. Then I asked them to share a strength they would like to lean into more and share a tangible action that they can take to do this. Okay. Again, if you want to assign this as pre-work and have them come as ready, people were like moved. They were like, wow, this is exactly what I need. Like Cloverleaf worded it in this way, and it's exactly what I need to be doing more of. And it was just, people were just listening to each other and hearing each other, acknowledging each other. They were just being super open about themselves. It built a lot of team trust. And it was just one of the most powerful team coaching sessions I've ever led. And it was so simple. I had one slide with the questions. That's it. And that's where Cloverleaf really goes to work for you and creates opportunities for you to create team building experiences where you don't need to do anything, right? Again, it was an hour. It was, something that got a lot of great feedback from the people on it and from the leader who was there. So this is a great way, again, to just focus on strengths, create meaningful conversations within the team, and have everybody be heard. All right, so we do have some additional prompts in the resource at the bottom of the resource. So I just want to draw your attention to them, some additional prompts for self and team when you're in Insight Search. So if you want to use those as well, you can absolutely do that.